You are listening to the Talking Right podcast with John Mosman, a voice for conservatism in a wasteland of progressivism.
Hello everyone, this is John, and you're listening to the Talking Right podcast. I am your host, John Mosman. This is Talking Right. I wanted to kind of today talk about a couple of things that, besides my conservative values, political and religious values, that I felt was important to discuss. Just because in whole it's something that does interest me, and it's something that I think is indicative of the culture that we are in right now. And I think if you were to look at the NFL, the National Football League, it is a kind of like a microscopic slither of how our culture is today. You know, in the NFL you have some good people, but you got some bad people. But the NFL culture, really, itself is bad. It is. And has been for a while. And while there's, like I said, many great players out there who have a great work ethic, who have character and are constant professionals, you see a consistency and a huge layer of selfishness, greed. You see immature people. You see people who really haven't learned by now the important lessons. And I think that's important because you have things that are going on in the NFL that kind of curtsy to what's going on culturally and politically in this country. For example, you've got Tom Brady, who is kind of doing almost a Hillary Clinton kind of thing, where they may not necessarily be doing something that's 100% the wrongest thing or the worst thing in the world, but they probably did something they shouldn't have, and they don't want to cooperate. And usually because people who are in position of power and who are worried about their public figure, they're worried about how people see them, are going to want to play this game of how you control the public in how they look at you. And in the case of Tom Brady, as well as in the case of Hillary Clinton, both of them have really mucked it up. They've really screwed up their reputation. And no matter what Tom Brady does from now on, he is going to be considered by a lot of people a cheater. And that's going to be a stain on his career. It's going to be a stain on his legacy. And even if we talk about Deflategate and we talk about how big of an important issue this is, and I agree that 4 games for deflated balls is a bit too much. Maybe 1 game. Although if Brady would have come out and said, we did this and we kind of, we knew about it or whatever, I'm sure at that point he would have just been hit with a fine. But they were right around the time of they just had won the AFC Championship, and now they were on their way to the Super Bowl, and I don't think they wanted to risk it, because in our NFL culture now, like in our society now, if you do wrong, it's okay until you get caught. And the public outcry for it is so huge that that what you're trying to avoid is not actually doing the right thing or the wrong thing, or you're not trying to avoid doing the wrong thing or trying to do the right thing. It's about avoiding that outcry. And there probably was some kind of fear on Tom Brady and some of the other Patriots there, that if they kind of came out on that, maybe that would have affected that. And then there could be the possibility that Tom Brady just didn't care and really just didn't want to answer it. And after all, he is a New England Patriot. His head coach, Bill Belichick, is known for his reticence on how he talks about certain things, and so there's that. But what has been recently something that has occurred in the whole spectrum here for everything that has occurred has been the recent comments that Chris Carter made. Now, if you don't know who Chris Carter is a retired Hall of Fame wide receiver. He played his entire career, most of it, at least, for the Minnesota Vikings. He did have a small stint with the Eagles, I believe, but for the most part, he was a Viking, true and true. And he had made some comments that have been over a year now, and there was a video that was on the NFL's website, and he clearly is stating something to people that he shouldn't. And so it's kind of interesting because now everyone's upset that he said these things. They're upset that he has made the comments that he's made. But it's been after a year since the comments were made, and ESPN the magazine interviewed a former San Francisco 49ers player, Chris Borland. And he talks about how Chris Carter talked about having a fall guy. And then Warren Sapp, because it was the NFC portion of it all. And the NFC portion of it all was Chris Carter, an offensive guy, and Warren Sapp, a defensive guy, talking about these issues. And it was at the Rookie Symposium in 2014. And then Chris Borland said that he said that we need to get a fall guy. And that Sapp repeated that we have to get him out. If the person goes to jail, the video was later removed from NFL.com. But we know, this is from ESPN's on the story, but we do know that the NFL issued a statement saying the comment was not representative of the message of the symposium or any other league in the program. And Carter, of course, took to Twitter, and later he would have said, I shouldn't have said that, where if you're going to have a fall guy, let him take the fall so that you don't get in trouble. The question here is, and if you don't know what he means by having a fall guy, if you know anything about NFL sports, and especially this tends to happen more with African American players than it does white players. But you do still see it with white players. I mean, Johnny Manziel was one of those people who probably did have that. But what you see this concept of them having their crew, right? They've got this group of friends. It's their posse, and a lot of that actually is because those guys have been with him for a long time, and now that they want to share in what he has, vice versa, that kind of stuff. So, but the question here and the issue here is, okay, why did Chris Carter say you should have a fall guy? If you're going to go out and do things and you're going to be stupid, why should you have a fall guy? Now, he says they were wrong to make the statement, and okay, that's fine. But I ask, why did he say those things? Because if he said it out of a joke, or if because he said it because he was being dead serious, the reality is both of those reasons for saying it, any reason he has for saying it, is indicative of the culture that is happening in the NFL right now. This idea of players being unprofessional, players being curtsy with law enforcement and breaking the rules, and for the longest time, the NFL has said, "Oh, you broke a rule, you're going to get a small little slap." And I think that's some of the reasons why, when you see what's happening now with Tom Brady, why Commissioner Goodell has come down hard on Brady, is because recently, in the last couple of years, the commissioner has tried to break down some of those things. And I think that his original intent is great, because I think he also himself saw it as a problem. Of course, he saw it as a problem for the product, meaning that if it continues, this kind of roguish behavior and this kind of criminal and immature behavior, this idea of these players going out there and getting high and getting and we've seen it a lot happen, especially in the early 2000s. You saw a lot of NFL players get involved in shootings, and even one of the most probably considered one of the greatest besides Lawrence Taylor linebackers, Ray Lewis, have been investigated for a crime. You have a former tight end of the New England Patriots, Aaron Hernandez, who killed a couple of people. Now, of course, again, I'm not going to say that he's indicative of the whole people who are involved in the NFL. But there has been a permanent nature going on here, and I think this is what the commissioner was trying to do. And I agree the commissioner had to find some way of dealing with it. But the real reason why he's done it has been not to really do it because to do it because it's the right thing to do. He's doing it because he wants to protect the brand. He wants to protect the money flow. But a lot of it has been secondary knee-jerk reactions on the behalf of the NFL commissioner when it has come to situations like the Ray Rice situation, where there was video and there was outcry. There was outcry. And we have that now in our culture. We see something and we're so shocked by it, we're so stunned by it, that we get upset, and then all of a sudden we want something done about it. And this has been something that's been indicative of the culture of our country and of our society. And I've got to tell you, while it's great, I don't want to demean outcry. Like, people who are responsible for doing hideous things should be treated as such. But when you think about the situation here with Chris Carter and Ray Rice, and all the things that have happened in the NFL the last couple of years, because the NFL has taken a huge hit from a PR standpoint, everything is built out of outcry. Someone gets upset, someone gets mad, someone gets offended, and then we do something about it. And I fear that that's the same thing that's happening to our society. And I think that's why I wanted to bring this up to you guys, because when you think about it, we need to be careful about, first of all, outcry justice, because usually that ends up being a mob rule and mob mentality where you go lynch somebody because it's seemingly that person did something wrong and you want to punish them. But that does get involved in the matter of due process. And that is what happened in the NFL with Ray Rice. It's what happened with other players in the same situations. So the reason I bring this up, and the reason why I want to bring up Chris Carter's comments, is because he is touching on something, whether he realizes it or not, whether he was being humorous or not, whether he meant it completely or not. He is touching on something that he has a reason for saying it. And that is, there's a trend of this kind of thing happening. And when you think about it, it kind of echoes our political society. I mean, Chris Carter could have been saying that to a Democratic or a Republican political gathering, right? Make sure you got a fall guy. And that's because so much now, the issue isn't about doing the right thing and not doing the wrong thing. It's about not getting caught and not having the media get uproared about it. And you have evasive tactics by people like Tom Brady and Hillary Clinton, who don't want to show us things because they don't want to be convicted. They don't want to get in trouble. And our media likes to downplay it. And while I agree that what Tom Brady did isn't that big, we've got people in the sports media world who are completely downplaying what he did. Oh, he didn't do anything. He was just some random guy there. You know, the worst thing he ever did was not cooperating or whatever. That is a problem. That is a problem. You have to get involved. Obviously, you have to be careful making sure your rights are protected, of course. But, you know, to say that the deflated balls are nothing, well, no. You don't say it's just nothing. And that's what people want to say about Hillary Clinton. It's just nothing. It has nothing to do with anything. As she said, get over it. Get over it about Benghazi. Get over it. Get over it that Tom Brady deflated the ball. Get over it, because they want you to get over it. They want us to get over it, and they want us to try to think that it isn't a big deal. And the bigger problem here isn't deflated balls or what exactly Hillary Clinton sent out in emails, although that is a critical thing. The bigger issue here, folks, the bigger, most important issue here is that we're in a society and we have a group like the media who are supposed to keep people straight. It's supposed to keep people honest and sober, and there was supposed to be that kind of way that if something happened and there was some kind of way that they were able to get away with something, the media would go out and find it. The media would go out and be a fact checker for society. And if anything now, media has done the opposite. It has covered. It covers for Obama. It doesn't even go into half of the shit that Obama has done. And they try to pretend that Obama doesn't do some of those things. The media picks and chooses who they want to publicly outcry and who they want to protect and cover up for. And we see that in our society, and it's the same thing. And personally, it's making me less and less want to be an NFL fan, quite honestly. In fact, football, I think, is becoming less and less important to me. And that's a huge statement to make. I mean, if you don't know who I am, you don't know that I'm a huge sports guy, right? I'm a huge sports junkie. I listen to sports radio a lot. I probably listen to about... I probably listen to about total a week, probably about 20 hours of sports radio a week, which is a lot. I usually listen to a lot of it when I'm in the car and I'm going to go pick up my fiance, or I'm going to go to the store. That's when I usually listen to a lot of it. A lot of it's on podcasts. And by the way, if you're listening to me on podcast, thank you so much. If you are at Spreaker.com and you're listening to this, thank you. And if you're at YouTube right now and on my page, thank you. And I want to take a time to just thank everyone who has listened to me so far and will continue to listen. And I've got some great news for people who are going to be tuning in next time, because I should have something in place that's a little different, and I think you'll like it when I do my next podcast for Talking Right. And of course, before I forget anything else, let me mention that you can also check out my other podcast, which is Tales from the Stone Table, and you can find that on my profile page at Spreaker.com, and of course on my YouTube, as well as you can find links to both of those podcasts at my website at johnmosman.net. But I had a friend of mine on Facebook ask me if it was about a scientific thing, or if it was there's a thing called the Stone Table out here. It's like a basalt, made out of basalt and all that, and I'm like, no, it's about Narnia. My reference to the Stone Table is about Narnia. And if you listen to my last podcast and I was talking about myth, don't forget that if you wanted to know more about that conversation that I was having, you can go to my other podcast, and it's going to be continued there. But back to the story, and back to what I was saying, and let me finish it up, because I do have to get going here, but I will say this. I think that what the NFL has showed us is it's showing us that the issue isn't about keeping people honest and about keeping people truly responsible for their actions. It's about determining what people think is important or not, and protecting a brand, and protecting the money stream that's coming into that brand, and trying to avoid public outcry, because people do react very extremely on public outcry. People want people's heads, and then usually people say something like, well, we'll do it for you, which I think is a problem too. Honestly, right? Oh, that person said an offensive thing on the radio, so let's kick him off the radio. That person said an offensive thing to somebody else, so let's take his basketball team away. That's kind of a scary thought when you think about it. And that's another thing that I want to talk about, and we'll probably talk about that another time, is this idea of public outcry, and needing to feed that desire of the public to be satisfied for how upset they are. And part of that is to do with the fact that they feel bad themselves about the issue, right? Because they're either viewing the product, they're either supporting or they're wearing the jersey. I think that if you were to talk to a psychologist about that, they would probably tell you there's some sort of guilt involved in that. But public outcry is huge. It's extremely huge. And I think that's something that needs to be considered, because if you don't, it's going to become a huge issue. And I think that's important. But for the NFL, for what Chris Carter said, I think it's indicative. If you have something going on and you have people who are telling you these kinds of things, I think that tells you a lot. I think that tells you everything you need to know. And with that, I do have to go. Thank you for listening. It's been a pleasure, and we'll see you again. Don't forget, you can go to my website, johnmosman.net. Thank you again. Good day.